UFC Fight Night Vegas 109, Dolidze versus Hernandez takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Cody Brundage versus Eryk McConico. I'm going to go with Cody Brundage. Now, I never thought I'd ever say those words ever again, but somehow they have found an opponent that Cody Brundage can beat in the UFC. Very, very odd career so far for Cody Brundage. You know, he's got a loss here and there. You know, he's lost to Bo Nickel. He's been finished a few times. He started his UFC run with some decent wins over Tresean Gore and Mbula. But other than that, he's had a no contest against Abdulrazak Al-Hassan, or maybe it was a DQ. And then he has a no contest in his last fight to Mansour Abdulmalik. So, very, very odd career from Cody Brundage so far. But I think he can beat Eryk McConico. I do believe Cody Brundage has what it takes to defeat the great Eryk McConico, who lost his debut to Sultan Ruzaboev, who I also think Cody Brundage would lose to as well. However, what I'm basing this fight on, Eryk McConico has a pretty underrated win over Maki Pitolo. People forget, man. Maki Pitolo was a marauder. He wasn't anyway, but he was in the UFC once. That's a regional win of Eryk McConico. He's a bit older. He's not a prospect, even though he's young in his career. I think he's 35. Trains at the MMA lab. Seems to be the middleweight formula for the MMA lab. I know that Jared Cannonier does some training there as well. But Cody Brandage's performance against Mansour Abdulmalik, I might be about to say something that's not that agreed with. I thought Cody Brundage was winning that fight, and I thought he was on his way to fraud checking Mansour Abdulmalik. He was doing pretty good in that fight if you rewatch it back, outside of the start of the third round, of course. But throughout the first two rounds, if he can do that to Mansour Abdulmalik, I reckon he can do it to Eryk McConico. But I think he'll be able to mix in the grappling a little bit more as well. So I'm going to go with Cody Brundage getting this one done by decision, 29-28, maybe a 30-27. I think he actually is going to win a fight in the UFC. Cody Brundage. We're moving on up the card, but before we do that, this video is sponsored by prizepicks.com. New users play $5 and get $50 instantly in lineups when you use code GURU. You got to use code GURU. That's the offer that we're working with here. We've also got what I'm going to go with for this card. I believe, if I clear some space here, I believe that Julius Walker is going to fight for less than 4.75 minutes of fight time. I also believe that Elijah Smith is going to fight for more than 6.75 minutes of fight time. And I believe that Gabriella Fernandes is going to fight for less than 10 minutes fight time in her fight as well. And I'm going for all three of them, 20 to get you 120. Use code GURU. We get back to the predictions immediately. Moving on up the card, Gabriella Fernandez versus Juliya Stoliarenko. Just spoke about this one a little bit. I said that Gabriella Fernandez would not fight for more than 10 minutes fight time, and I think she will find the finish in the first or second round here. Juliya Stoliarenko is very much a finish or be finished women's fighter. I mean, a lot of her fights go to a finish, whether she's on the receiving end or not. She has good submission ability, but I don't see her submitting Gabriella Fernandez, who has good jiu-jitsu herself and has some level of experience in Brazilian jiu-jitsu in her game. I'm not going to call her a phenom or anything like that, but she's not a stranger to Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so I don't think she's going to be a lost fish out of water if Juliya Stoliarenko manages to pull guard on her, like seems to have happened to a lot of other Juliya Stoliarenko opponents. Stoliarenko is big. She's a big woman. She couldn't look more Lithuanian if she tried. So I'm going to have to go with Gabriella Fernandez here. She's coming off a win over Wang Kong, who is very good, and they've moved on with Wang Kong and started putting her against ranked opponents, and now I believe she's ranked. Gabriella Fernandez beat her, and she gets Juliya Stoliarenko. I know she wasn't expected to win, but at the end of the day, she did knock down Wang Kong, I believe with a head kick, and then rear naked choke her in the second round. That's impressive. And she beat Carly Judice, who's pretty good at striking. Even though it was a very close fight and she could have lost. She mixed in the grappling where she needed to. I think she'll have no problems with Juliya Stoliarenko. And I think we're looking at a second round or late first round finish for Gabriella Fernandez here over Stoliarenko. We move on Up the card, Uros Medic versus Gilbert Urbina. Uros Medic. I've got Uros Medic here over Gilbert Urbina. Gilbert Urbina's not 5'9". You are not about to see a 6'1 Uros Medic next to a 5'9 Gilbert Urbina. That's the heads up I'm fucking giving you here. Billion-dollar company can't get a measurement right. Gilbert Urbina's probably going to be a little bit taller than Uros Medic, which is insane that they actually let people bet on fights when they have this incorrect of information on the tail of the tape. 5'9", 6'1". I'm telling you, Medic is 6 foot. Urbina's 6'1". He's going to be taller than Uros Medic. That being said, he doesn't have much presence despite being larger than most of his opponents, which is probably why he's lied about his height being 5'9". But either way, I'm going with Uros Medic. I think he's better offensively. I think he's got more finishing potential. I've not been impressed by Gilbert Urbina so far in his career. Lost to Charles Radke in his last fight by KO. Lost to Brian Battle in the UFC as well. I think he has a UFC win over a Koshke, bro, who are both very, very awful in hindsight and weren't UFC level whatsoever and kind of got like name value brothers coming up, the Koshke brothers, Orion and Louis Koshke. I think he beat Louis Koshke, or it might have been Orion. It might have been Orion Koshke, who actually sticked around in the UFC a little bit longer than Louis Koshke did. But Urbina's only win is him. And other than that, you know, he was on tough. And I mean, what do I even say about Urbina? It's weird that he's even on the card. He's 7-4 in the UFC still. They're cutting Martin Bidet. I mean, I don't know what to say anymore. I'm going to go with Uros Medic. I know Uros has had some bad performances as well, but his losses have come to Maitak Bekorolblai. And he had Maitak Bekorolblai in a lot of trouble in round 1. I know that Morolblai took the fight at 170, but Uros was a former 155er as well. And it was just moving up at that time anyway. So I don't think the size was too much to do with it. But Uros Medic was a lightweight. That's lighter man's skill. I'm going to count on that here against Gilbert Urbina. He can grit down and push. We saw that at altitude against Matthew Semmelsberger, who isn't the best, but I think is about a Gilbert Urbina level UFC welterweight. So I think Uros Medic can get this one done. Punelli Soriano is massive, a presence, a bulldozer of a fighter in the welterweight division, was able to knock out Uros Medic, but I don't think Urbina has that much presence in the octagon. I think Uros will be the one backing him up, and I think Uros will be the one getting a TKO win over Gilbert Urbina. We move on. Joselyne Edwards versus Priscila Cachoeira. I'm going with Joselyne Edwards, mainly because Priscila Cachoeira took this fight on short notice. That's it. That's it, really. There's not much else to it than that, folks. I'm going with Joselyne Edwards. She should win this one. She's pretty decent, Joselyne Edwards, as well. She's had some close losses, but she's always been competitive in pretty much every fight that she's had. And she's a little bit underrated, Joselyne Edwards. Her striking's a bit underrated. Her grappling's coming along a little bit. She's starting to do a little better in those positions. So I'm going to go with Joselyne Edwards pretty comfortably here over Priscila Cachoeira. Cachoeira's coming off a win over Joselyne Nunes. Joselyne Nunes was her last opponent, and she actually was on a 2-fight losing streak before that. Got beaten up pretty badly in those fights. Cachoeira's taken a lot of damage. And so she's going to have a lot of scar tissue, which is an important thing, which I'm going to bring up at the end. But she just beat Joselyne Nunes, which we assumed was a great win because we saw Joselyne Nunes come onto the women's MMA scene, ugly, male-looking, and thought, this is a world champion in the making. Turns out she wasn't, and she's actually quite fucking awful at fighting, and she doesn't have a chin. So Priscila Cachoeira beat her, but at the time I was like, oh my god, she beat Joselyne Nunes. But Joselyne Nunes is kind of shit anyway. She's just hideous. So everyone said she was going to be a world champion, which I think wasn't enough evidence, maybe. But I went with Joselyne Edwards. I'm going with her here, over Priscila Cachoeira. And it's going to be a 29-28 decision. This is going to be a 29-28 close decision. And Priscila Cachoeira has got way more scar tissue. Way more scar tissue than Joselyne Edwards. That's going to be a factor. If someone's going to be cut up and bruised up and bloodied up in this fight, it's going to be Priscila Cachoeira. And if they're going to a 29-28 women's MMA fight decision, even if Cachoeira lands more shots, they're probably going to go with Edwards anyway. So I'm going to go with Joselyne Edwards getting this one done by decision win. We move on. Elijah Smith versus Toshiomi Kazama. Right. Weird matchmaking again. A lot of these fights on the earlier part of the card are very one-sided. I think Elijah Smith is going to win against Toshiomi Kazama. Kazama's coming off a win over Grigoris Firilampio, I think his name was. He's a Cypriot guy. Sounds like the name of a Cypriot guy. Grigorio Filiamprio or something like that. Filiampro? Filiamplos? That sounds more Cypriot. Yeah, Grigoriou Faralampos or some shit was the guy's name. And Toshiomi Kazama was losing the whole fight, got dropped badly in the fight, survived it, got a triangle on the guy and submitted him with a triangle in a come-from-behind win. And that's his only real win, Toshiomi Kazama. He won, I believe, his debut or his fight, road to UFC fight maybe, or did he lose that one? I can't even remember, but Toshiomi Kazama's done nothing in the UFC so far of value. He lost a lot of fights in the UFC. He got knocked out by Rinya Nakamura, which is now a common thing since Rinya Nakamura knocked out Nathan Fletcher. But I have not been impressed by Kazama. I've not been impressed by Toshiomi Kazama. I think this is going to be a decent fight, though, because I think Elijah Smith, he's decent, but he's not a top-level prospect. I think he's a mid-level prospect where we will see this guy reach a couple more wins. I don't know if he reaches the rankings. I don't know if he reaches top 10. There are some prospects where I would say this guy's going to be top 10. This guy's going to be ranked. I don't know if I'll say that about Elijah Smith. The bantamweight division is very, very difficult. However, in the Vince Morales fight, Vince Morales is a tough, experienced veteran, and he put Elijah Smith in some very dangerous positions. Now, could the fight have gone either way? I went with Elijah Smith. I think it should have gone to Elijah Smith. But it was a close fight. Very, very close fight with Vince Morales. But I'm not going to use that against him. Because for a young prospect, he fought Vince Morales, who's a veteran, who's fought the who's who just made Raul Rosas Jr. look pretty shitty as well. So I'm not going to hold that against Elijah Smith. But what I'm saying is, he got put in bad positions. He got put in submission positions. There was a locked-in guillotine at one point in that fight with Elijah Smith and what's his name? Vince Morales. And Elijah Smith battled through it. He got through it. He stayed in the fight. He went to the distance. That's a good thing to see. And that makes me trustworthy in him to go out there and handle business against Toshiomi Kazama. How he handles business, I guess that's going to depend on, I guess that's going to determine how we respond to what we consider Elijah Smith as a prospect after this one. But he should beat Toshiomi Kazama. He should beat him. Toshiomi Kazama should not be in the UFC. He Hail Married a triangle after being beaten up by Firilampio, who's terrible himself, and therefore kept his job and now is being offered to Elijah Smith. That's the narrative here. We move on. Up the card, Julius Walker versus Rafael Cachoeira. I've got to go with Julius Walker over Rafael Cachoeira. Again, I don't understand the matchmaking here. I kind of do. But Rafael Cachoeira, he's kind of like a fitness merchant at these heavier weight classes where I think if he was fat, they would have cut him. They would have cut him after his last loss to Modestas Pakauskas if he was a fat guy. Because he's in shape, he looks good for the company to have on their roster because he looks like a capable male, which is rare in those fucking divisions. So they've kept him around. Those two losses are maybe the worst two losses any UFC person has had in their first two fights. He is completely folded at any sign of adversity whatsoever. Against Ibo Aslan, which now looks bad, because Ibo Aslan ain't all that and ain't good at all, really. He's kind of shit. But against Ibo Aslan, dude, he froze up against the cage and did not throw back and got beaten up for a first round TKO. Not throwing back at all. He got hit by some decent shots and then covered up against the cage and just quit. Against Modestas Pakauskas, he got hurt a little bit more with the initial blows. Same situation now. Up against the cage, covering up behind his guard, doesn't want to throw back, doesn't throw back, eventually gets TKO'd by Modestas Pakauskas. You would imagine Julius Walker is capable of doing the same thing, and I think he is. Even though he's not as much of a dynamic first round, he is. He actually has got some dynamicness to his game. And I don't mind his loss in the UFC. If you're wondering who Julius Walker lost to in his debut, because he used to be an undefeated prospect, he lost to Alonzo Menifield by split decision in his debut fight. And based on the matchmaking, I don't know if this is true, but I would assume that was on short notice. Because otherwise, why the fuck are they matching up Julius Walker with Alonzo Menifield in his debut? That makes zero sense. But if they did do that, shame on them. But they nearly were proven correct by trying it because Julius Walker nearly fucking beat him. In that fight, Alonzo Menifield mixed in grappling and was able to sort of win a lot of body language moments against Julius Walker. But other than that, in terms of strikes, Julius Walker kept right up with him. So I think Julius Walker's very underrated, and I think he should very easily deal with Rafael Cachoeira. If he can get on him early and be aggressive early, you should be able to deal with him. But Cachoeira is dangerous. He's athletic. He's big. He used to be a heavyweight. He has knockouts there. But skill-wise and fundamental-wise, he just doesn't seem to have it. So I'm going to go with Julius Walker, getting this one done. I don't know how. Anyway, maybe in the first, maybe later, who knows. We move on. Up the card, Eryk Hernandez versus Christian Leroy Duncan. I'm going with Christian Leroy Duncan over Eryk Hernandez. Eryk Hernandez is actually coming off of a 2-fight win streak. I know, right? Beat Jamie Pickett and Chris Weidman. It's crazy that can constitute a current 2-fight win streak in the UFC middleweight division. We do not cut people soon enough. But Eryk Hernandez, he's on a win streak. Yeah, they're against two shit old fighters that haven't really got it anymore. Who was the other guy that he beat? Old. Is he old? Eryk Hernandez, Jamie Pickett? Not old, but he's not good. You know what I mean? And Eryk Hernandez ended up out-decisioning him using grappling, which is funny because Bo Nickel barely could take him down without a groin shot. All good, though. But then Eryk Hernandez actually ended up grappling well against Chris Weidman, ending up on top at the end of the fight and winning by TKO to ground and pound. I think you have to look at Eryk Hernandez's recent fights. He was a little bit more explosive early in his career, but then he started sort of maybe being too well trained, and now he's trying to be technical, and I think that's going to hold him back against Christian Leroy Duncan. I think Anders should go for broke here. He won't. He will try to very strategically figure things out, but I think that will give Christian Leroy Duncan too much time to get comfortable and too much time to start styling on Eryk Hernandez. This should be a schooling. This is what this should be. This should be the middleweight edition of Cyril Gane versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I see a decision win for Christian Leroy Duncan, 30-27, maybe 30-26 with a 10-8 round at some point. Who knows? But I see him going the distance, but I also see him really badly piecing up Eryk Hernandez and schooling him. I think he has the ability to school him. So I'm going to go with Christian Leroy Duncan getting this one done by decision win, and I'm very confident in that as well. We move on. Up the card, Miles Johns versus Gene Matsumoto. I've got to go with Gene Matsumoto. He arguably beat Rob Font. And the only reason Rob Font had a really good first round is because he faked a glove touch and rocked Gene Matsumoto in the first 5 seconds. Watch it back. But Gene Matsumoto is pretty underrated. Even though he didn't really make too much noise on the come up in the first place, he had a couple of good decision wins, not really too many crazy dynamic finishes or anything like that to write home about. But he was undefeated 16-0, and they put him against Rob Font. And he didn't really get fraud checked. I remember Kyler Phillips got shut down completely by Rob Font. Matsumoto was in the fight the whole time, getting his grappling off on Rob Font, which is impressive, and also being able to do okay on the feet in moments as well, where normally he should be completely exposed if he's back on the feet with Rob Font after taking that fight. So I'm going to go with Gene Matsumoto over Miles Johns. I think he can win this in multiple areas. I think he could strike to a victory. I think he could grapple to a victory. And the fact that he has those options while being able to do both might just be a little bit too much for Miles Johns. Johns has some wins. He has knockout power. He has some knockouts over some lower tier fighters in a division and some decisions against others where he hasn't looked the best and he's been outdone. He just seems a little bit too... He's like a Yoel Romero of bantamweight with how coiled up he is and flat-footed. And I think that's going to give Gene Matsumoto too many options to mix in the grappling and the striking, because he's going to be very feint-heavy. Matsumoto's going to be moving around laterally on the outside, making Miles Johns readjust his stance. And I think Miles Johns is just a little bit too flat-footed. Maybe he could land an uppercut here. He does have a nasty uppercut, and Gene Matsumoto could get caught going for his shot. Just throwing it out there in case it happens. But this should be a Gene Matsumoto decision win, 29-28, 30-27. I reckon 30-27, but it may be a competitive round. I'm going to go with Gene Matsumoto getting this one done. I see him spending a lot of time on Miles Johns' back, in my opinion. We move on. Andre Fili versus Christian Rodriguez. Real MMA fans know the dilemma that I'm facing. Christian Rodriguez should beat Andre Fili. Therefore, I've got a sneaky suspicion he fucking won't. I'm concerned. And you know what? I'm fucking going with Andre Fili. Sue me. I really don't give a fuck, dude. I'm testing it. All right? I'm testing the theory. Andre Fili should win this fight. And you know what? It actually makes sense. Christian Rodriguez is not going to finish Andre Fili. And if you go the distance with Andre Fili, he's pretty fucking good. He can beat a Cub Swanson going the distance. He can beat someone else going the distance. He had a really close fight with Nathaniel Wood going 3 rounds at featherweight as well. If you can't put out Andre Fili early, or he doesn't stuff his head into a guillotine against you like a fucking retard, Fili don't lose 2 in a row, dude. Fili rarely loses 2 in a row. I don't think he actually does. So I'm going to go with him to beat Christian Rodriguez, purely because I can't see how Christian Rodriguez wins. He's a little smaller. He doesn't have the reach of Andre Fili either. I don't think he really has the power on the feet or the dynamicness on the feet with Andre Fili whipping up head kicks and shit like that. I think he's going to have too much presence on the feet for Christian Rodriguez, which will lead Christian Rodriguez to grapple. But I don't see him being able to grapple in a way that will shut down Andre Fili. You know? I feel like Andre Fili is going to be able to work with him in the grappling and do too much damage to him in the clinch. Maybe at range on the feet, landing low kicks here and there and high kicks and body kicks and just throwing kicks out there at the guard. I can see this being one of those types of fights. So I'm going against Christian Rodriguez for old time's sake. Okay? I'm going against him. I know that Christian Rodriguez lost a decision to Malik Costa, and Andre Fili put his head in a guillotine and lost, which is such a bad loss for him. It's such a stupid move. I don't know why he did it. He literally looked like he intentionally threw the fight. But I feel like losing a decision is maybe even worse. You know? I don't know. I'm going to go Andre Fili. I'm going to go Andre Fili. Crafty vet performance. A little bit too big. A little bit too physical. This is my underdog of the card. Andre Fili to get this one done over Christian Rodriguez. Close 29-28 decision win. We move on. And Andre Fili's lost like, Dan Ige by KO. These are pretty good level fighters, you know. And Christian Rodriguez can't seem to get past the unranked barrier reef of the featherweight division, let alone the ranked one. So I'm going to go with Andre Fili to get this one done by decision. We move on. Iasmin Lucindo versus Angela Hill. You know what it comes down to? I would pick Iasmin Lucindo based on finishing potential and looking like a man. But I don't see Angela Hill getting finished here. I don't see Angela Hill getting dropped. I don't see her getting put away by KO, by submission. I don't see any of that. And I don't see her getting manhandled by Iasmin Lucindo either. And I do mean those words. So I think Angela Hill's going to win a close decision here. Maybe this is another upset. I'm not sure on the odds. Maybe I should check those things before making these videos, but I try not to. I know Andre Fili's going to be one, though. Angela Hill, I've got her winning this fight. I think she's a much better fighter overall than Iasmin Lucindo. She's better at working in the clinch. She's more busy. She's more active. She throws a lot of shit. I like that in women's MMA because a lot of it's not going to KO you or hurt you. So volume never hurt nobody in women's MMA. That's often a trend in women's MMA, other than maybe Shevchenko recently. A lot of women's fighters do seem to win just by having high volume on the feet. So I think that's going to be a difference here. Angela Hill will throw more. She will land more. And with Iasmin Lucindo, she just lost to a women's fighter on a pay-per-view card. And it was such a dog shit fight. And she just got out-grappled, right? And it was a pretty shitty fight back and forth. But other than that, she has some knockout power. But yeah, in between it all, in terms of skill, she ain't fought the level of opponent Angela Hill's fought and been robbed against. Because Angela Hill's been robbed a few times against some decent ranked opponents in the women's strawweight division. And I don't see her being able to finish Angela Hill. So this is going to be a tough decision fight. And Angela Hill's probably going to win. 29-28, decision, upset. Angela Hill gets it done. We move on. Steve Erceg versus Ode Osbourne is the co-main event of this fight night card. By God, I can't wait for September and beyond. Steve Erceg should win this fight. Now, I think Steve Erceg is going to drag this to a decision or a late round finish in the third, maybe. That's what I could see happening here. I don't see an early finish, and if it happens, I think it's actually going to be O'Day Osbourne. I don't think 1 KO win over Matt Schnell is enough to convince me that you're this finisher that's going to be able to finish a lot of flyweights. Flyweights typically don't get finished. And that's kind of what makes O'Day Osbourne a good underdog in ways. Because he can be finished, but he also can get finishes. And that does separate you at flyweight quite a bit, because forever there was the almost cliche of a flyweight 29-28 barn burner on a card, and no one would really get finishes. Whereas O'Day Osbourne's got submission ability off of dropping you. He can hurt you and knock you down at flyweight. He's got range in his hands. That's often a lot of the time where the power comes from, catching you when you don't expect it, catching you when you think you're out of the way of a shot. But at the end of the day, and this is what it comes down to, I actually disagreed with the decision, but I understood it because visually it looked like Ronaldo Rodriguez was landing those ground and pound shots. I don't think they were landing all that much, and I think O'Day Osbourne won the third round and the first, where he nearly finished Ronaldo Rodriguez, of course. If Ronaldo Rodriguez can ever beat you by decision, I think he's shit and very fundamentally flawed. If he can ever beat you by decision, I don't care if it's a close fight that you should have won and it was a robbery. I really don't care. If he can even make it close enough to get a robbery win over you, Steve Erceg's going to win. He's a way more well-rounded mixed martial artist than Ronaldo Rodriguez. I think he's got a better chin than him. I know he got chinned by Cara France, but overall I think he's got a better chin than Ronaldo Rodriguez. I think he's got better submission defense. I think he's got better submission ability and grappling ability in general. I think he's got better IQ. Everything. I think he's better than Ronaldo Rodriguez. I even think he's got more power. Ronaldo Rodriguez is literally, he wishes he was Steve Erceg. And Ronaldo beat O'Day Osbourne. Close fight. Say what you want about it. I don't want to hear it. I'm going to have to go with Steve Erceg. Even though I think O'Day Osbourne's underrated, and him taking this on short notice could be a wild card. Maybe shock the world, get an upset, all of a sudden he's in the mix. Who knows? But I don't see it happening. And I think there should have been better matchmaking done than this. We just saw this with Taylor versus Park, in my opinion. There is a gap between the contenders that... Dude, Erceg basically beat Pantoja. I won't entertain the idea of Osbourne winning this fight. He could. And that's how crazy the fucking sport is. But he will not outdo Erceg. He needs to catch him and finish him early. And I don't see it happening. So I'm going to go with Steve Erceg getting this one done. 30-27 decision. Maybe a third round finish. We move on. Roman Dolidze versus Anthony Hernandez. I'm going with Roman Dolidze. And I know that sounds crazy. Because I've picked against Roman Dolidze many times before. And I haven't. That must just go to show how little I think of the middleweight division, because I've always said Roman Dolidze is dog shit. But I keep picking him to win, and he is winning recently at middleweight. And I do see him winning those fights and go, okay, I think he beats so-and-so. He's going to beat Marvin Vettori. And he was able to do that on the feet. And after the Brendan Allen fight, Marvin Vettori still got it as a striker in that division. Even though he's very limited, he still is good and capable at the division. So I don't think, normally, like before, a while ago, maybe I would say Anthony Hernandez would have a stand-up advantage. I don't think that's the case. I think they're going to be quite even on the feet, and I can see Roman Dolidze pulling off a bit of a Chris Duncan against a Mateusz Rebecca, where he's waiting and throwing knees up the middle and elbows, and he's trying to cause harm and damage and land big shots as Hernandez comes in, and I can see him trying to be busy in the clinch, in the single collar, and trying to land shots there. I think Roman Dolidze is going to beat Anthony Hernandez. Anthony Hernandez is one of the most underrated prospects in the sport because he doesn't get enough credit, and he is slowly but surely beating the vast majority of the division. And I think he's on a crazy run right now. I mean, he beat Mikel Pereira, but I actually think that he should have finished that a lot sooner. So even though it was a good win at the time because we expected Mikel Pereira to be able to finish him, or at least some people did, I thought he could have. Because we didn't know yet that Mikel Pereira doesn't train MMA and has never seen an exercise bike in his life. So he gassed out after 2 minutes. I think Anthony Hernandez should have been able to finish that a little sooner in the fight. Second or third round, that should have been fucking over. So that's a bit of a bad look to me when it comes to Anthony Hernandez. Other than that, very close fight with Brendan Allen, where Brendan Allen kind of threw it away in moments because he's fucking retarded. But we knew that about Brendan Allen. And Anthony Hernandez has been doing his thing in the grappling, man. He really has been doing his thing. But Roman Dolidze has some of the best off of his back jiu-jitsu defense. And he has some of the best off of his back BJJ in the UFC and the higher weight classes right now. Name a guy ranked, because you're going to bring up Paul fucking Craig, off of their back who's as good as Dolidze, middleweight or above. Am I retardedly missing out some huge obvious name of someone off of their back that would be better than Dolidze? I don't think I am. I don't think I'm missing out a name. Dolidze's kind of the guy that spins you up if you take him down. Against Jack Hermansson, watch back that fight. He got taken down. He nearly had him in an armbar immediately after being taken down. He got taken down again. He reversed position on Jack Hermansson, ended up on top position. He got taken down, put Jack Hermansson in a calf splicer, inverted calf splicer, spun him around with it, took top position with the calf slicer or splicer, and took top position and started pounding him out with it. This guy's got pretty fucking wicked Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think he's like an IBJJF or ADCC Oceania champion, which sounds niche, but Craig Jones is from that region. You know what I mean? So I'm pretty sure Roman Dolidze is an ADCC Oceania world champion. And a lot of people don't really look at that part of his game, but he does have wicked jiu-jitsu. And I think he's too big, physical, and has too much presence on the feet for a guy like Anthony Hernandez, who doesn't hit hard, needs volume to beat you. Maybe he could just out-volume Roman Dolidze and take him like easily. You are warranted for your prediction of Anthony Hernandez. It's a fine prediction to make. But I've got Dolidze here, man. I don't think he's going to be in trouble on the ground with Hernandez. Even against Phil Hawes. I know it's Phil Hawes, but still. Immediately once he was on bottom, heel hooks in and he's wrenched off Phil Hawes' entire leg. Back up, pressuring him, knocks him out cold. I think Dolidze's got a perfect anti-grappler style. I don't see Anthony Hernandez being able to safely, effectively grapple with him offensively. And I don't see him beating him on the feet. In fact, I can see Dolidze winning this on the feet. So I'm going to say that Roman Dolidze is going to score a submission win. Maybe a ground and pound TKO win from like a reversed position situation. Maybe in round 2 or 3. And this could come from him hurting Anthony Hernandez on the feet first. I think Anthony Hernandez would beat a lot of the top names. Although I don't know. But I would like pick him to beat Israel Adesanya. You know? I just think Dolidze's stylistically weirdly a fucking issue for him. And I think they're going to see that presence difference in the cage. Dolidze's going to be big and tall and Hernandez is going to be moving a bit more. And I think Dolidze's going to have no fear of being taken down. He has a very underrated game off of his back. And I think he'll believe that. And a lot of fighters that fight Hernandez, it's like, don't let him get you down. Don't let him take you down. Then you're going to be stuck in this cycle. Whereas for Dolidze, if Hernandez takes him down, he might try and outdo him off of his back. And I think he can outdo him off of his back. So I'm going to go over Roman Dolidze, getting this one done by finish in the 2nd or 3rd round. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.